a tale of, first of all, economic hardship, and then that translates into hunger, all kinds of social problems that come with hardship and hunger. People starving are desperate, aren't they? And they'll do desperate things. So there's a lot of crime. It doesn't matter where you are, but Naples is significant in that it's the first place that it happens in mainland Europe. This is kind of, it's like the harbinger for what's going to happen elsewhere in the continent as the liberation rolls forward into Germany.
Hello. On the 27th of September 1943, in German-occupied Naples, an uprising began that lasted 4 days. By the 29th, the Germans had lost the city and so made the decision to leave, heading north for safety as the victorious Neapolitans and Partisans celebrated a day later. On the 1st of October, the Allies arrived and the city was secure. Or was it? Within months, starvation descended on Naples, and with it disease, poverty and prostitution. Joining today is Keith Lowe, author of Naples 1944, as we delve a little bit deeper into this piece of Italian and World War II history, including the notorious Camorra. Coming up, I'll be at the Imperial War Museum on Saturday the 1st of November, so it'd be great to see you there. Please share the pod with friends, but until then it's me talking Naples with Keith Lowe. Keith, great pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Thanks very much for joining me.
It's lovely to be here again.
Well, I wanted to talk to you because we did speak, of course, when the book came out last year, but I wanted to get you back on because we only touched the surface, I think, and also I think the book's out on paperback now, isn't it?
It is. It is
Yes.
this month.
Yes, with a different cover. It's got the same gorgeous orange Look at Me, Naples 1944, but with an image of an American. Is that a tank with some men on it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the day the Allies rolled into Naples right at the beginning. In fact, this exact time in 1944, October 1st of October 1944, they rolled in, and yeah, so that's a picture of the people cheering and sort of welcoming the Allies as they've come to be liberated.
Well, exactly, and that's why I want to talk to you because, I mean, the subtitle is War, Liberation, and then you kind of think, oh, brilliant, and then it's chaos because this is why I wanted to speak to you. I mean, really, you think when the Allies liberate a city, it's sort of happy days, and as the cover of the book sort of seems to suggest, the horrors of German occupation are over. But I mean, I was trying to think, is Naples sort of, I don't know if unique's too strong a word in this regard, in that once it was liberated, then misery followed. Were there any other cities, I mean, maybe in Italy or anywhere else that experienced such horrors after liberation?
Well, I mean, every city's different, but yeah, liberation's a wonderful thing. But yeah, what comes next is never nice. It doesn't matter where you are in Europe. Yeah, it's a tale of sort of um, first of all, economic hardship, and then that translates into hunger, all kinds of social problems that come with hardship and hunger. People sort of starving are desperate, aren't they? And they'll do desperate things. So there's a lot of crime. It doesn't matter where you are, but Naples is significant in that it's the first place that it happens in mainland Europe. This is kind of, it's like the harbinger for what's going to happen elsewhere in the continent as the liberation rolls forward into Germany.
Well, when we spoke last time, and I'll of course link that in to the show notes, th- we didn't really discuss much on the German occupation of Naples and how that was felt by the Neapolitans. So, I mean, what was presumably the Germans? I mean, we all know, of course, of Nazi occupation is, of course, horrific. But did the Germans have a kind of view of Naples separate to other Italian cities? Did they take a sort of, there's a divide in Italy. Between North and South?
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, there's always been this divide between North and South, which the Italians have definitely felt. Um, when it comes to Germany, their main gripe was that, they were allies with Italy, and then suddenly they're not anymore. So they felt utterly betrayed and took their revenge uh, as a consequence. So they were brutal in lots of Italy. But especially somewhere like Naples, which was because Naples was on the front line almost immediately after the Allies and the Italians signed their armistice. So, you've got a major city which is near the front line, so they've got reasons to start destroying things. But on top of those reasons, you also have this great feeling of revenge. So that gives an extra sort of flavor to the destruction that the Germans conducted there. I mean, it wasn't just. I'm not just talking about physical destruction here, and they were brutal all round. There were massacres. Anybody who resisted was put up against the wall and shot. They tried to kidnap all the men to take them off to as slave laborers. I mean, these are all this is the sort of Nazi playbook I'm talking about here, but it was all condensed into a period of 3 weeks in Naples. So you get all the sorts of things that are happening all over Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, but it's all condensed into a very short period of time in this city.
They only have a few months though before it's liberated, though, don't they?
Well, no, um, the Germans and the Italians are allies all the way through to the summer. Then Mussolini gets deposed and arrested and imprisoned on the 25th of July in 1943. And then you got this sort of 6 weeks where, I mean, the Italians are ostensibly, they're still allies with the Germans, but they know what's coming. So they're looking for a way out. And they're sort of putting forward very inept peace feelers with the Allies. And it's not until the beginning of September that they finally make this armistice, and it becomes public. 8th of September, it becomes public. And it's from that moment that the Germans say, I mean, they've seen it coming. They know what's coming. So they pounce immediately and try and take over all the Italian military bases, police stations, and so on.
And there
Um,
are quite a lot in Naples, aren't there?
oh yeah, God, yeah. I mean, Naples is not
Highly
only was
militarized. Is that overstating it?
well, yeah, because it was the biggest port in southern Italy, so there was that. Um, it also had military bases all round it. It had big police stations in all the sort of most prominent places. Um, so up on the headland, there's a big police barracks called I think it's Caserma Nino Bixio. Is its and you can go there now. You if you walk up to the top of the headland, you see this gigantic building sort of overlooking everything. They've got castles there, which were also used as military bases. So all the strong points in the city were all.
Well, it's a ancient medieval city. It's really interesting reading the history of those. I mean, you mentioned those castles, actually, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were always used as sort of strong points from medieval times, and here they were again in World War II, being sort of shelled and so on with modern weapons. So
so
yeah, yeah, these are important places which the Germans decided they had to get hold of before the Allies turned up, and also so they could control the city while they were there.
so what was the kind of numbers that were in the fighting before liberation?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, the first thing that happened is okay, the Germans are trying to take over. They've marched into all the barracks. They've told everybody to put down all the Italians, put down your weapons. We're taking over. And the Italian generals, rather than standing up to this and resisting, they just ran away. Basically, they abandoned their troops and left the sort of junior officers to make the decisions. Some of those junior officers did the sensible thing, just put the guns down and said, "Yeah, yeah, nothing to do with us." But then there were others who were braver who said, no, we're going to stand up to this. How dare you come into this place? And so there were then shootouts, which inevitably ended up badly for these poor abandoned individual barracks surrounded by German troops. And eventually some of them they'd surrender, but because they put up a fight, they then took them all out and shot them. I mean, it's really quite brutal. Um, so you've got that initial phase of resistance by some people. Um, the others, I mean, there's a lot of people a lot of Italian soldiers who said, "Oh no, no, we're on your side," and they sort of went home, but they took their weapons with them and hid them, thinking, yeah, these could come in handy later. So you then got a sort of second stage of uprising a couple of weeks later when the Allies are just on the doorstep of Naples, and the locals think, right, this is our moment. We've got to stand up now and up. They had this massive uprising against the Germans, led by these junior officers. And we're talking like lieutenants and sergeants and so on, not big strategic guys. These are the little guys on the ground. Um, Taking control, and you've got firemen and police chiefs all join in as well. You even get quite a few fascists who are, you'd think would be on the side of the Germans, but no, they're there to defend their town as well. So, you've got this sort of weird coalition between soldiers, a bunch of old fascists, and also the general population in Naples who also join in with this uprising, many of whom are communists. So you've got this sort of really weird range of people all rising up against the Germans in this, it was called the 4 Days of Naples. They barricade the streets. They start, some of them have hidden their air raid, their sort of anti-air raid equipment. And they use that to sort of fire on tanks that are coming to
Oh, what,
Germany.
anti-aircraft
They
guns?
actually have anti-aircraft guns hidden in the forest just above Naples, which they've kept there for 3 weeks, and the Germans have never found them. And then, when this uprising begins, the Germans start sending down tanks to quell it, and some guy up in the forest says, "Right, here we go, get the anti-aircraft gun out," and they turn it on these tanks and fire on them, and then they blow 5 or 6 of them into smithereens, and the rest of them had to turn back. So they couldn't go and quell this uprising after all. So there's loads of things going on all at once in this city in this 4 days. Down in the main city, you've got these really narrow streets. That's very, like you said, it's a medieval city. Actually, it's even more ancient than
Yeah,
that. The street pattern was laid out by the ancient Greeks 2,500 years ago. So it's the same streets, and they're really narrow. They're built to be about the width of a sort of cart, a horse and cart. So if you want to drive a tank down one of those streets, or an armored car, which the Germans did try and do and got stuck and couldn't get out again, and you've got people up above you throwing down petrol bombs on you, and people leaping out of doorways and firing. I mean, they were pretty they very soon realized that this was a bad idea and didn't send any more troops into the ancient center of Naples anymore. So yeah, there's loads of things going on all at once. I try and cover it all in the central section of the book because it's so fascinating. It's really quite inspiring as well. You've got women and children handing out ammunition to the men who are on the barricades firing, and it's a community atmosphere in this uprising.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what I wanted to ask you about as well, because I mean, it's a tragic story, but I wondered how I mean, obviously you spent a lot of time in Naples in the research. How do the Neapolitans look back on this short period of their history where they're all kind of unified?
Yeah, absolutely. They're all unified. This is defense of their city. They're very proud of their own identity, not as Italians, but as Neapolitans. And this is remembered as their sort of great moment, the 4 Days of Naples. They liberated themselves from the Germans before the Allies turn up. So that picture on the cover of the Allies rolling in and being greeted, the Germans are already gone by then. The locals have already kicked them out. So in Neapolitan memory, it's a it's a glorious moment where they rose up against the Germans and liberated themselves. And they're very proud of it.
And so, since publication, have you been to Naples to talk about the book?
I have, yeah, yeah. I went to University Naples to give a talk of, yeah, yeah.
And what's the
Uh,
reaction been?
oh, I mean, they're delighted that anybody outside of Naples shows an interest. I mean, lots of Italians don't know this story. If you go up into northern Italy, they think that the resistance was born there. They forget that it happened even before the resistance had been formed in places like Milan or Turin or whatever. Even before then, Naples was already liberating itself. The northern Italians kind of forget that, and and yeah, so in Naples they're glad when anyone comes from outside, be they Italian or English or anyone else, and celebrates their local identity and their the biggest story of the 20th century for them.
Hello, Ollie here. I wanted to let you know of an event happening in London on Saturday, the 1st of November at the Imperial War Museum, Lambeth. This podcast and others are getting together for a podcast live day. Great friends of the show, Tessa Dunlop and Ian McGregor, will be joining me as we discuss how we memorialise war and the bomb that ended World War II. Head to the Imperial War Museum website for tickets or click on the show notes, and I hope to see you there. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, okay, with the Allies' arrival, I mean, and you write about this. I mean, this is really interesting in the book. Is that I kind of have a sort of vague sympathy with the Allies because their job number one is to push the Germans out of Italy. And so you have these military commanders. I think Mark Clark is the sort of main one, and then his boss, Harold Alexander. They're not really thinking about administering a city. They've got to look at the military objective, haven't they? So I wondered, with the benefit of hindsight, what would have been a better way of dealing with Naples, which obviously then descends into disease, starvation, prostitution, and all the rest. How do you think the Allies should have handled the running of the city after they arrived?
Well, I mean, first thing to say is I'm with you with the feeling sympathy for the Allies. I mean, their first job is to prosecute the war. And what they do when they take over Naples is really they just want to rope in Naples and the people of Naples and any industry that's there to help them prosecute that war. So they want to exploit whatever they can just to fight the Germans. Uh, Problem is people have got to live, haven't they? And they completely underestimated how bad the destruction would be there, and how bad the food problem would be there. They came in with this idea that um, Naples is in this beautiful, lush, volcanic countryside, which is really fertile. It's some of the most fertile land on the planet. It grows the most amazing vegetables and so on. Anybody who's eaten Neapolitan pizza can testify to the taste of the tomatoes is out of this world.
And the lemons, they're almost
And the
sweet.
lemon,
They're
yeah, I mean the just the produce, which is
creamy, yeah.
it's wonderful. But unfortunately, that's all in the countryside, and the transport had been so badly smashed up that nobody could get the food from the countryside into the city to feed the people. Uh, and the Allies just completely underestimated this. They didn't really think about what the situation was going to look like when they got there. They just made all kinds of assumptions, which all turned out to be wrong. So there was just this sort of lack of preparation, really, because their minds were not on that. They were thinking of prosecuting the war and thought the rest would take care of itself. Well, that very quickly turned out not to be the case. People by the end of the year were beginning to show serious signs of hunger, some cases starvation. There was a typhus epidemic. I mean, there was all kinds of problems all going on at the same time in Naples, which then became an emergency, and they had to do everything on the back foot. Yeah, so planning. poor planning from the beginning because their eyes were elsewhere.
But even once these things start, it still takes the Allies a bit of time to. Um,
Yeah, it really does. I mean, they sent the Americans sent this guy. I mean, he became famous later because he ended up being the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, I think. Adlai Stevenson, his name was. They sent him. He was
he's a
part.
presidential candidate at one stage, I think.
Yes, yes, absolutely, yeah. So he was sent as a part of an economic mission to yeah, they knew stuff was going badly wrong in Naples, so they sent him along to assess what was going wrong. And he wrote this report back saying, I mean, the list of things that were going wrong. I mean, it lasted sort of 90 pages, this report. Um, and he made all these suggestions, which then nobody paid any attention to when it came to Naples. I mean, they started implementing some of them when it came to later on when they liberated Paris and so on. But it was all a bit late for Naples by that point. They spent about a year fiddle faddling around and not dealing with the problems. Basically, all what he was advocating was kind of, I mean, it's kind of an early version of the Marshall Plan, really, which was something that the Americans were not prepared to do in 1944 and didn't get round to being prepared to do it until 1948, and which is when Marshall then put forward the same plan, and there we go. The rest is history. So yeah, it's military hierarchies move slowly, unfortunately, and it was very slow in the case of Naples, and the people suffered as a consequence.
Well, one area that, I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with Naples recently with its organized crime problems, the Camorra. And this is sort of almost a kind of perfect scenario for organized crime, presumably. And how conscious were you of the Camorra before you started writing about Naples? And did you sort of want to delve into a little bit of that story? I know you write about it in the book, but how much of the history of the Camorra and also their more recent past were you interested in the book?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you can't think of Naples without thinking this is sort of the always the elephant in the room, isn't it? With Naples. So yeah, I was definitely interested, and I also I sort of approached it with the idea that the Camorra were going to be central to all the crime and so on that was in the city. And actually, it was a revelation because they weren't really. I mean, they kind of were, uh, but they mostly weren't. I mean, actually, the main sort of mafia influences in the city in the 40s and all the way through to the 50s was not the Camorra, actually. It was the Sicilian mafia. They kind of took over. But I'm getting ahead of myself here because during the war, most of the crime and most of the corruption and most of the black market and so on was not really generated by the Camorra at all. It was the Allies themselves, the Allied soldiers pilfering their own stuff and selling it on the black market. And they needed then to get Italians to fence it all for them. And so they sort of found these locals who then they became sort of local crime kingpins on the back of what the Allies were themselves doing. So there's a long chain of events here, uh, which only then gets taken over by the mafia really after the Second World War is over. They leap on something which has been kind of informal and unofficial to a certain degree and ramp it up to make it a mafia operation.
And how, when you were in Naples, how familiar were you with the Camorra, today? Because you've
Well, I
been there.
mean, look, I'm a historian, so I don't get involved in contemporary stuff.
Organized crime. That's good to know.
I'm also, yeah, I'm not particularly, look, if I was involved in organized crime, I'd be a lot richer than I am now. Um, yeah, I'm just a lowly historian, unfortunately. But you know when you're wandering around the streets that it's always there in the background. I don't think it's as bad as it was in the 1980s when I was first going there.
Oh, really? Was it bad in the 80s then?
Oh yeah, I mean it was everywhere, and it was blatant as well, everywhere on the streets. I mean, there's contraband cigarettes being sold everywhere. You couldn't walk down any street without being offered um, yeah, contraband cigarettes, fake cigarettes. Sometimes they had their own factories where they would, you
What's
know,
a fake cigarette?
well, they manufacture their own tobacco, stick it in cigarettes, and then stick a
What, so like
Marlboro
really
sticker
just
on the front or something.
dodgy tobacco?
Yeah, it was just any old crap that they just put into cigarettes and then just put fake labels on. So there was a
Right.
lot of that going on as well. Then there was, I know there was a lot of involvement in the music industry. Music's always been big in Naples. So there's lots on bootleg tapes and bootleg records and so on. Later on CDs, there was a lot of that going on. Uh, Protection money in all the music venues, especially, but also just generally everywhere. Nowadays, so I'm told it's more, it's been directed into more things like Airbnb apartments and things like that. So
Really?
yeah, there's a semi-legitimization of a lot of the money, and but there's still vast amounts of tax avoidance and so on going on. But this is all just hearsay. I haven't. This
Yes.
is not something I've studied and know
No, no,
exactly.
no, I know. A little tangent. I hope the listeners can indulge me and you for indulge me. Thank you. Okay, right. So, okay, getting back to the story. Now there are the beginnings of a sort of democratic movement that's really interesting. You know, these two Italians, Neapolitans that we should really talk about. I think Joffre and Croce. So
Oh, Sforza and Benedetto Croce, yeah.
You're much better at the pronunciation than I am, but yes, because I mean, there is this kind of movement that builds, and I know that the Allies are kind of trying to get involved, and that obviously causes problems back in London as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, look, the Mussolini's ousted in even before the armistice has been signed between the Allies and the Italians, and he's replaced by this old soldier called Pietro Badoglio, and he kind of takes over the government in place of Mussolini, and then is the one who signs the armistice. So the Allies have this armistice with Badoglio, this old fascist who's not apparently not a fascist anymore. Um, and because they've made this sort of gentleman's agreement, they want to keep it. They want to keep this guy in place. They regard him, he's tainted, but he's our guy, right? So they sort of feel like they can trust him to keep a lid on things and make sure there's no sort of uprisings against the Allies behind the lines. Uh, Now, the Italians are up in arms about this, pretty much across the board. They don't want this old guy in charge of them anymore. He's been tainted by years and years of association with Mussolini. They want him out, and they want to have a proper democracy. And they've got candidates. They've got this guy, this old, he's a senator, but he's also a very famous philosopher and historian called Benedetto Croce. He's all the way through the war, he's running sort of an intellectual resistance against the fascists. He has a magazine which comes out, um, and he's kind of untouchable because he's so famous at the time. So even though he's says all sorts of things against Mussolini, he's one of the few who doesn't get arrested and chucked onto a prison island somewhere. So after the war, they figure, right, this is a perfect candidate for being our new prime minister. We should have this guy instead. There's a sort of coalition of different groups who form. There's like social democrats, some communists, some Christian Democrats. The full range of different political parties form this sort of kind of like a government in waiting, and they want to be the government in waiting, but no one's going to allow them. No one lets them. The old Badoglio doesn't want them there, of course, but neither do the Allies. They refuse to allow elections. They refuse to allow these people step forward and take control of the government. And yeah, as a consequence, the Italians are really angry about this, and they get progressively more and more angry until eventually they've got massive demonstrations. They threaten to go on strike, and it causes all kinds of problems behind the lines, the very problems that the Allies are trying to avoid in the first place.
I mean, after the war, I mean, obviously you get a Italy nearly goes to communism after the war. Um, Now, I found this theory somewhere. I wanted to ask you about it actually. That you know, the original Fiat 500 that was built, mass produced in Italian factories, a
Yeah.
very affordable vehicle for many Italians, and the theory being that this vehicle, the original Fiat 500, is what stopped Italy from going. I'm sure it's not the only thing, but it's what stopped Italy going to communism, because this was just sort of a slice of capitalism that everyone could own, and it wasn't expensive. I wondered what you thought about that. Okay, your
I mean,
silence
it's a
speaks
nice
volumes.
theory. I'm sure it contributed to the. I'm sure it contributed to that. It's Italians. There's a full range of Italians, just like everywhere else. There are those who are extremely right wing, even today, and I know some of them, and we tend not to talk about politics. But then on the other side, there are also some who are extremely left wing, and you're right that after the war, the Communist Party was massive in Italy. In fact, I think it was the biggest communist party in the whole of Europe. You forget behind the Eastern Bloc, Italy was where there were more. I think there were 2.25 million members of the Communist Party. So this is not just people who are voting for them. They've actually gone out and paid for a membership card to the Communist Party. So yeah, they've got massive support after the war. And well, I mean, this makes everybody in Western Europe and America very nervous. So a lot of American funding went behind making sure that the Christian Democrats won in 1948, which they did. Um, so yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why Italy didn't turn communist. Um, and Fiat 500s is probably in there in the mix somewhere. Absolutely. Why not?
You still have a communist party. I mean, the Greek Communist Party, I think, in elections today wins around, I think, 5%, which is quite high if you know compare it to Britain. I mean, do the Italians still have a communist party?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's
I've,
difficult keeping a track of of which Italian parties are around at the moment because they keep
they
changing
change
their
names all the
names.
times, don't they?
Yeah, quite often the same people move from different party to party, or they change the name of the party, and yeah, so it's difficult keeping track. But there's definitely very, very left-wing parties in Italy, as there are very right-wing ones.
Yes, I'm quickly Wikipediaing, and I can't really tell. Yeah, so clever listeners can write in. But this has been fantastic, Keith. Thank you very much. And I noticed, okay, the book is available in all good bookshops, but there is a small discount on in Amazon at the moment.
Okay, I hear it's also available in some bad bookshops.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you mention that because I said the name of a massive company that you
No,
can?
actually, my local bookshop is called All Good Books. Deliberately because people always say it's available in all good bookshops. So it's called
That's very
the All
good.
Good Bookshop. Buy it from my local place in Herring.
Exactly. Yeah, always good. I was in a place called last night called Our Bookshop, which is quite nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, Keith, thanks so much. And as I say, links are in the show notes.
Great. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks so much for listening. Links are in the show notes, including to the podcast show live at the Imperial War Museum. Please share with friends and family, and if you want to get in touch, you can through X or email history@aspectsofhistory.com. But until then, thank you and good night.